Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome to church.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. We call ourselves NewSpirit.Church, right? Because of that verse in Ezekiel. I've got it here. I should have this memorized by now. 36:26. It says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." And that's what we're here for. At New Spirit, we want new hearts in this room. We want new hearts in this community. And so today we're going to attempt to do that through worship, through singing, through hearing the word preached. And that's going to take about an hour and 15 minutes to hour and 20 minutes. And so we're happy to have you here for that time. If you're new here, I can't even see who's out there. It's so bright. I'm sorry. If you're new here, I'm glad you're here. You are an answer to prayer. We have been praying for you. And God bringing you here is an answer to those prayers. And so we're just so happy you're here. We hope that you feel how loved you are and how welcome you are here, because you are. That's true. I was trying to think about something encouraging to start a morning with. I was thinking yesterday, my daughter, we're discipling my daughter. She's a teenager, and she doesn't really like to read her Bible. And I was trying to figure out how she would get to know God and his character if she wasn't reading her Bible. And I was thinking how we're made in God's image. And so she sees God in all of you. When Jen takes time out of her week, her very busy week, to come sit with Riley and generously share her love of nail polish, Riley's seeing the image of God in that generosity and that creativity.
It was so fun.
When Julie takes time to laugh with Riley and work on a word search with her after church, she's seeing God's sense of humor and God's love in Julie. And that's for all of you. When Andrea gifts her with a shirt or prays for her, she's seeing God's love, God's image in Andrea. And when Katie does those things, she sees God's image in Katie. And so I just want you guys to be encouraged that every act of kindness, generosity, humor, creativity that you're doing it in the image of God. You're showing God's character to someone. You're preaching the gospel through your actions. And so just be encouraged that you can be a gospel spreader, a gospel bearer, just by being made in the image of God and living that out. And I want to thank you for being that in my children's life and in mine. And let's stand up and we're going to worship God this morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Morning.
You like it when Mark starts preaching? I like when he does that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you go.
How'd you guys like God is on the Throne? It's a good song?
Uh-huh.
I like that one too. It was a good one. Good choice, guys. Well done. And I just want you to know this is NewSpirit.Church, and we're a church plant, and we're trying to keep it really simple around here because, well, we have a simple mission. That's to love God, love other people, and make disciples. I hope you see that in all the things we do around here, that all of that points back to that mission we were given. You guys like the stripes on the parking lot?
Yes!
That's pretty good, right? I love that. I want you to know that we're not here to make a parking lot look great. We're here to make disciples and love people. So when families come with their kids and their kids are crossing safely so that they can come to church and hear the gospel and receive Jesus, it all points to the purpose. We paint the parking lot so that we can make a kid into a disciple and keep them safe from getting run over on the way to church. And so I just hope you see that this is why we do this. And I hope that as we talk about this church and how to get involved, that you see that this is what it's pointing to. This is why we're here. And so there's 4 main ways that you can get involved in what God's doing, that you can love God, love others, that you can make disciples. The first big one is to get in a group. Groups is the main way that we make Christians into disciples. We're going to talk a lot about that today, but the point isn't to just be a Christian. The point is to become more like Jesus, be made in the image of Christ. We call it discipleship, and that happens mainly in groups at this church and through this church. And I wanted to invite up Julie because Julie's in my group, and she had kind of a cool little testimony about what God's been doing in her and through her as she's been a part of this group. Would you come up on stage? You can see there's just shadows there. It doesn't make you look good. It just makes all yeah. Now, it looks great.
You look good.
yeah. How's it look? Like the complexion, the light. It looks great, right?
Anyway,
Gary shared this morning about representing who God is. And Paul and I started coming to this church in December of this last year. And we had left a church where we were a member for 20 years. And God called us out. And it was very difficult for us because we were comfortable. We were comfortable going to church on Sunday. We were comfortable going out for lunch with everybody afterwards. And the problem was there were a lot of things going on, and we ended up with some major hurts when we left. So when we came here, we were broken. We were struggling. I thought that God was done with me in my life and said, "You can rest now." I love God. He's so cool. We came here, and I told Ben we were doing talking about our testimony. And what I shared with the group was, I was so broken and so hurt and so beat down that I had a hard time finding God in a lot of places. We started coming here, and we have always been involved in our church, groups, whatever. So when they said, "Let's do groups," okay, my heart said, "Watch out. You're setting yourself up for hurt." It was very hard for me to step out and be in a group. I cannot tell you how much love I received and how much acceptance.
Wow.
We love you.
Yeah.
For the first time in a very long time, I felt God, and I felt the joy of my salvation once again. It didn't come by reading scriptures, although that's important. It came from all of those people there who loved us and accepted us right where we were. And it's okay. It's okay to be who you are here. It's safe. People will love you. Your groups will bring you together and hold you in God's arms if you just let Him. If you just give over to God, He will bring into your lives those people who will encourage you, who will lift you up, and you will see Jesus through them. And it's in their eyes that I see God's eyes. It's through their eyes that I see Jesus. It's through their eyes that I feel the love. And I would encourage anybody to get involved in a group. Anybody. Because being here Sunday is very good and we learn a lot. But being in a group allows us to step out and share our testimony and our faith with other people and hear their story. And it adds to your own. Jesus never left anybody on the outside. He always brought them in. So your small groups, they will bring you in. And you will come to know the Lord in a very profound way. God is not finished with me yet, and I may be turning 69 years closer to Jesus this year, but He has something for me to do, and by God, I'm going to do it.
I knew I couldn't have said it better. That's why I asked Julie to say it for me. So we're going to start our spring groups this April 28th. We're going to start it right here on a Friday night. Do I have the screen for that? So I hope you guys can come to the first one, and I'd love to have you as part of this. It's really going to be a big small group that first night. And so my goal is to have most of you in a group, and let's start on April 28th by joining up. One of the other big things that we do to get involved in what God's doing in this church, and in this town, in this community, in his kingdom is by serving. And there's someone who started coming to church. His name is Jerry. I don't see him today, but I'll talk about him in a good way. But he was kind of shy, kind of sit in the back, in the corner, arms folded, like, I'm not sure about these people, this place. God, I don't know. It's just kind of, he's here, which is great. That's a starting point. And then one day he starts to help decorate after church. I'm like, are you serving? He's like, no, I'm not serving. I'm like, that looks like you just served. And then a little bit more, he says, well, how can I help? Oh, yeah, I can help with that. And a little bit more, he's helping out. And I just watched God change his heart and make him into a just kinder person. Not that he was mean, but he's just becoming a better person and really more Christ-like. And it's through serving, through getting involved, that God's changing him. But it's also, he has an impact on what God's doing in people's lives. That baptism we did last week was because of Jerry getting the tank, setting it up, breaking it down. That I just want you to see how one person can have so much impact, and how one person serving can impact one person so much. And that's my hope for all of you, is that God starts changing you and building you. And I know that service is a key way for him to start doing that. And so if you're not on a team, if you're not leading a project, I invite you to go to the website, NewSpirit.Church/serve. You're going to see some ideas there. If you have an idea of your own, come talk to me. I'd love to get you involved in that way. Another way is through giving. And someone asked me last week, they said, hey, how's NewSpirit.Church going? I haven't seen you in a while. I said, it's pretty good. I said, well, tell me about pretty good. I said, well, spiritually, it is awesome. I mean, people are finding Jesus, growing in faith. Their families are getting more faithful. They're becoming servants and ministers of the gospel. And people who are coming, like, they really need Jesus. We're not just stealing people from other churches and sheep flocking. These are people who are just on fire for God, and they're coming from the community. It is awesome, and I'm loving it. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm happier than ever. This is incredible. Amen. And they said, that's awesome. I love it. Why did you say pretty good? Why didn't you just say it's incredibly good? I said, well, the other side of the coin is we're not yet financially viable as a church yet. That's kind of the next part of starting this church. We started a spiritual movement. Now it needs to be self-sustaining. And so in order for the church to be viable, we have to raise another $2,000 in monthly recurring giving in order to cover our monthly recurring ministry costs. And so the answer isn't to cut the costs. You can ask our team leaders. We already don't spend as much as they would like to. They ask me for some pretty basic things, and I say, the money isn't there. I'm sorry. I would give it to you. It's just, it's not there. And so sometimes they do without it. You can ask our tech team or our worship team or our children. Sometimes they just buy it and they don't turn in the receipt. And that's my compliment to them for being faithful saints and doing that. But it's also just my way of saying we can't just cut back on what we're doing, because that cuts back on the impact. And we don't want to cut back on the impact. We want to increase the impact. And the way that happens is by increasing our financial faithfulness. And so I'm gonna demonstrate how to start becoming financially faithful. It's not, that $2,000 isn't going to happen by one person giving $2,000 a month. I know you're not rich, but it's going to happen by everyone becoming financially faithful and generous with our giving. And so if you go to the website, I'm going to demonstrate for you up here. If you go to the webpage, NewSpirit.Church/give. I just want to show you how to do that. If you go to the giving page, is it loading? I'm going to let them put that up on the screen in a sec. But if you go to the giving page, it'll have a giving portal, and you can select how much. You can select monthly or recurring. And I just want to invite you to, if you're giving 0%, try 1%. See what happens. And don't wait till all the money runs out at the end of the month and then figure out what's left for God. Try it at the very beginning. You get that paycheck, you get that, retirement, Social Security check. Give 1% off the top. See what happens. See if you have none left over at the end of the month. I'm betting you will. And you're going to find out, oh, actually, God's been faithful to me. Actually, I'm blessed. I had to give up that extra drink at the coffee shop, but I'm still blessed. And so is my church. And so am I by becoming generous with my finances. So you type in an amount. Go ahead and type in an amount. See what they type in. Come on, we're more faithful than that. There we go. Now we're talking. All right. Yeah. Regular? Yes. Yeah. We're rich here. Monthly, yeah. Because I get paid monthly, so I don't get paid. But when I was getting paid monthly. I get paid on the 1st. That looks good. First donation? Sure, next month. Why not? You type in your email. Go ahead and demonstrate for them what an email looks like and what a name looks like. But that's how it looks. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to give with a credit card or with a bank account? Some people give with a credit card because they just want to see that instantly work, and maybe they're trying to get travel miles or something. I will tell you that we pay about $100 a month in credit card fees when you do that. And so if you give through your bank account, we pay 30 cents per donation, which is nothing. That is literally beans. So just, if it's all equal to you, select the bank account giving, and then, click continue. Wow, Matt, are you really going to do this? That's amazing. Yeah, go down to bank account. All things being equal, bank account, you get more bang for your buck that way. It's only 30 cents and there's no percentage on top of that. And so if you're at 0, try 1. Try 1%. See what God does. Maybe you're already giving at 1 or at 2%. See what happens. Talk with your spouse. Say, hey, I want to try 3% this month, maybe 4. Let's see what happens to us and through us when we become more generous, and let's watch the impact that happens around us. I will tell you that the people who give the most see the most impact around them. I'm watching families grow in faith, their extended family, their neighbors. More is happening in them and around them. Their impact is increasing as their faithfulness increases. And that's going to be true for us as a church as well. And I can't wait till the spiritual movement is just spreading like crazy, because we're giving like crazy. And that's just the next step as we plant this church. So last thing I want to talk about is inviting. We are almost out of invite cards, and we have more coming this week. So I invite you to take the rest of those invite cards, put a few in your wallet, put a few in your purse, and give them to people who you want to invite to church. You say, hey, will you try my church with me? Here's the information. And that's making a big difference as people start coming. People start hearing the gospel. People start becoming faithful with their families, with their lives, with their they become servants. They become group members. They start growing in discipleship and faith, all because it starts with your invitation. They don't want to be invited by an ad or some social media meme. They want to be invited by a person. They want to come with you. They don't want to come by themselves. So invite them. Fill that empty chair next to you just by saying, hey, will you come to church with me? I want to show you one last thing. I'm going to invite Jen up here. She's going to show you how prayer is a central part of this church and how you can be involved with that.
All right. Hey. Good morning, guys. Good morning. So nice to see you all. I'm going to actually explain to you how the prayer wall through our website works. So I'm part of the prayer team, and you can make prayer requests online that we do get emailed throughout the week. So I'm going to explain kind of how that works. So if you go on the website, and it goes, how to submit a prayer request, and see that, and I'm on my phone, the little footstep button on the bottom. I'm so bad with right and left. I think it's my right. I'm going to go with right. Who knows? We're going to roll the dice on that one, but click on that. And it says you can make a prayer request, come on a Sunday, serve. That one says join us in prayer. Yours is a little different. Okay. Yep. Make a prayer request. So the one with the little prayer emoji. That's not a high five, guys. It's a prayer emoji. Let's just be real, upfront about that. So make a prayer request. Click on that. It's gonna think a little bit. Get started. Mine looks a little different because I'm signed into my account, and it's wanting you to start a prayer request. Go right there. Yeah. So you don't actually need an account to put a prayer request on our prayer wall, but it will ask you for an email at some point in the process, just so you know. So you can write in your prayer. You're going to have to type something like, hi guys, it's nice to see you.
He's not a fast typer, honey. You might want to keep talking.
There we go. Hey, hi guys. That's awesome. And then go to continue. And then what's going to happen after that is you can decide if you want it on the prayer wall, which is something that everyone, if you went to our prayer wall, could see, or you could select just the prayer team, where as just the prayer team members get notification and only have access to those prayer requests. So it wouldn't be on the prayer wall. And we do have people who utilize that feature from time to time, and so it would be completely confidential. If you chose the prayer wall, there we go, then it's gonna have you put your first and last name, or you can use your info if you have an account with us. And continue, yeah. And then after that, put in an email. And once you put in your email, it's gonna come to decide if you would like some sort of follow-up with that. And so, you know, do you want the prayer team to reach out to you? Do you just want it on the prayer wall? So once you put your information in there, it's gonna kind of go, okay, here's what you have set up. Here's your prayer request. Do you want to be contacted by the prayer team? Yes or no? And then it says confirm, and you click yes, and it will be posted to our prayer wall. So yeah, you can choose and submit. And that will go on the prayer wall if you submit it right now, Matt. And the prayer team will follow up with you because you asked us to. So anyways, that's how that works. And we would really like you guys to utilize that a lot. And I know that there are other members of our church family who check that prayer wall periodically. I know I always look through during the week and just see if there's new prayer requests that I haven't heard yet. And so I do want you to know that we are, as a church, we are praying for those requests if they come up. So I think I need to hand this back over to Ben because I'm not preaching the sermon this morning. I'm very unprepared for that. But I think he is ready.
All right.
Are we ready?
All right.
Ready!
Yeah.
All right. Just fix my jacket here. Hey, we're going to get into the Word of God. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is it all right if we pray before we start?
Yes.
Let's do it. Father, you say in your Word that you want to give us a heart of flesh and remove our heart of stone. We ask that you do that this morning. Through your Word, Lord, we know your Word means something to us. It applies to us. And so we just ask that you'd remove a heart of stubbornness, a heart like we know it all. Show us how your Word applies to our lives. Help us be students of your Word, but also obedient to your Word. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, hey, my name is Ben Oje, and I'm the lead pastor here. One thing you got to know about me is I am a Seattle boy. I was born and raised in Seattle. You don't have to cheer it because I know you guys don't like the big cities sometimes, but I grew up living in the city, and that means I grew up loving Seattle sports teams. Now, I know you guys love some Seattle sports teams. Did anyone grow up in the 90s?
Yes.
A couple of you? Okay. In the 90s, let me tell you, the Seahawks, they were terrible. They were awful. They were the worst team in the NFL, so it was all about the Huskies. You remember when the Huskies were good in the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, national champions, 1990. Everyone was wearing Huskies, crew neck sweaters. People were talking like the Huskies. A college team could beat the Seahawks, a pro team. We thought it was possible. That's how good the Huskies were. Seattle was a football town. Always has been, but back then it was a Huskies town. And then the Sonics got good. Everyone was talking about Peyton and Kemp. Key Arena was sold out for years. I had Gary Payton's shoes. Check this out. I wore those things on my feet. Can you believe? Like, you have to be a fan of the Sonics, a fan of Gary Payton to wear those shoes, because those are pretty ugly, right? But I wore them because I was a fan. And then the Mariners got good for the first time ever. Were you here for that?
Yeah.
It was incredible. Everyone was wearing a Mariners hat. We were beating the Yankees. The old Dumpy Kingdom was selling out tickets. People actually sat down and watched baseball, like on television. Can you believe that? Like, it was so popular. People actually watched it. And so then, in the 2000s, we'd gone through Huskies fandom and Sonics fandom and Mariners fandom. In the 2000s, the Seahawks got good. So guess what? Everyone became a Seahawks fan. And then the casual fans started becoming rabid fans. Everyone had a jersey, and even casual fans were getting jerseys. And people started paying these crazy ticket prices, selling out the stadium. They built a new stadium. People were filling the local theater just to watch the game. and like drink beer and party. Like people were all about that Seahawks fandom when we were making those playoff and Super Bowl runs. And I learned that whenever Seattle has a winning team in any sport, the fans turn out. And the casual fans become rabid fans. And Jen, who is the most casual, even apathetic sports fan you will ever meet, well, even she'll put on the jersey and be like, yeah, Seahawks, Russell Wilson, my God, I love the Seahawks. You have it, but see, I'm just trying to say, even if she can become a fan, like, that's just who we are when our teams get good. So my question for you is, have you ever rode that wave of fandom? Who here has been a big fan of one of those teams or something? Maybe it's a different team. I met a guy this morning, he had a tattoo. It was Matt. He has a tattoo of the team he's fan of. This is St. Louis Cardinals, because he's from there. Isn't that crazy? You should check it out later. So I've learned that a lot of us are big fans, especially when our team is good. But I've also learned about some of you, you're not sports fans, right? You're like, even when the team is good, I'm not into sports. But here's what I know about you. You're a fan of something. Everyone has sometimes it's a subculture fandom like Fortnite. You ever met someone who's really into video games like that? Or maybe that anime fandom, someone who's really into Japanese cartoons. Taylor Swift's got a big fandom. K-popper's got a big fandom. Some of you are big Harry Potter fans, Marvel movie fans. And so you raise your hand if you're just a big fan of something, even if it's not sports. Yeah.
Fan of Jesus.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. You see, we ride a big wave of fandom in sports. We ride a big wave of fandom in some subculture. And that's what it looks like for some people when they follow Jesus. And we're all familiar with what it looks like to be a fan of something. And let me tell you, the definition of fan, this is like a dictionary definition. It means enthusiastic admirer. We are enthusiastic admirers of a sports team or Harry Potter or something, but that's how a lot of people treat their faith in Jesus. Like we're an enthusiastic admirer, a big fan of Jesus. And people treat their faith in Jesus like they do their fandom for the Seahawks or their fandom for Taylor Swift. And so these Christian fans, they attend the big Christian concerts and conferences and worship events, big church services, bigger than this. And just like a fan attends the big game, that's how a lot of Christians treat Jesus. Let's attend the big game. And fans think that faith in Jesus means rooting really hard for Jesus. Go Jesus, go Christianity. I'm rooting for Christians, and I'm rooting for this certain church or this certain theology or this certain denomination. We treat this faith in Jesus like we do fandom. And they think that faith in Jesus doesn't just mean rooting for Jesus. It means rooting against the other team. Boo, atheists. Down with Muslims. Take that, liberals. Like, we're just here to like root for the right team and against the wrong team. And that's what people treat faith in Jesus like. Fandom. The problem with this mentality is that Jesus didn't really care about his fandom. He didn't recruit fans. He didn't ask people to cheer for him. He said things like this. In Matthew 7, he says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father." Notice he says, not the one who enthusiastically admires me will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father. And then he says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." Notice he doesn't say be a fan of me, but follow me. And then he says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." Notice he doesn't say make fans of all nations, make disciples. And so there's something incongruent here between fan culture and what it means to be a Christian. There's a lot of people who admire Jesus, but they don't obey Jesus. They just like him enthusiastically. And there's a lot of people who are fans of Jesus, but don't really follow him. They just root for him. And there's a lot of people that love everything that Jesus did for them, like sacrifice and eternal life, but they like the Jesus that requires nothing of them, like a devotional life, giving their time, giving their money, giving their obedience. They want a Jesus who did everything for them, but requires nothing of them. That's what a fan wants to be. That's what a fan does. But disciples are what he called us to make, and it's what he called us to be. So how do we do what Jesus did? How do we do what Jesus did? How do we do what he asked us to do? How do we actually make disciples instead of fans? And then what does it look like to be a disciple and actually follow him as opposed to being a fan of him? Because we're all familiar with fandom. We're not that familiar with discipleship. And so we're talking about that today. That's why we need to talk about what it means to be a disciple. Because it looks a lot different than fandom. And let's just define it. What is a disciple? And what does it look like to be a disciple of a guy as opposed to a fan of a team or a fan of a celebrity, an enthusiastic admirer of a person? We're not supposed to just be enthusiastically admiring the guy Jesus or the movement of Christianity. This is the start of a greater series we're doing called The Marks of a Disciple. The idea is that when we define and identify what a disciple does, then we can do a better job of making those disciples and being those disciples. Am I right?
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's talk about that. Today we're going to examine the scriptures and see that a disciple of Jesus is constantly with Jesus. We're going to see a disciple of Jesus does everything that Jesus commands, everything that he says and does. And we're going to see that a disciple of Jesus is sent by Jesus to do what Jesus did. A disciple is with him. A disciple does what he does and says. And a disciple is sent by him. The bottom line is that being a disciple of Jesus is an apprenticeship. Being a disciple of Jesus is an apprenticeship, not a fandom. It looks like an apprentice, not a fan. That's the bottom line. Sometimes Christians get upset with this message because they feel like we're calling into question their salvation. How dare you question my salvation? I'm saved by Jesus. Salvation doesn't require me to do anything more. It doesn't require me to do good works. Stop making faith in Jesus all about these good works. My response to that would be, stop making faith in Jesus all about salvation. Stop making his life and ministry only about the cross, only about atonement. He did a lot more than that with his life, with his ministry. Instead, try following Jesus as a disciple. Make yourself his apprentice, and you'll experience not only salvation at the end of life, you'll experience fulfillment and blessing in this life. Being a disciple of Jesus isn't just about what's next, it's about what's now. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe Jesus called you to not just a different afterlife, but a different life right now?
Yes.
I believe it too. Then we're going to start talking about what it means to be his disciple right now. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
We're going to do it. A disciple of Jesus is constantly with Jesus. I want you to think for a moment about how Jesus spent his time on earth and in his ministry. Let me give you a quick quiz. What did he spend most of his time on in ministry? Number 1, healing people who were sick. Number 2, teaching truth to the crowds. Number 3, making 12 men into mature disciples. Number 4, reforming Jewish worship. Or number 5, dying and rising again to atone for sins. He did all these. Which one did he spend the most time on?
12 men.
Just kidding.
I introduced the topic on purpose, and then I gave you the answer. So, which one of these did he do the most?
12 men.
Number 3, he made 12 men into disciples. Now, he did all 5 of these, but he spent the most time doing the third one.
Right.
And so Jesus gained a lot of fans through his healings. He gained a lot of fans through his teaching. He had a big following.
Yes.
But then he went home at the end of the day, and the fans weren't with him. The people he taught didn't come with him. The people he healed didn't come with him. Who was with him at the end of the day? The 12 disciples. They were constantly with Jesus. And Jesus wanted it that way. He planned it that way. He invited them to be that and be with him. Mark 3 says he appointed 12 that they might be. Or can you read? Hold on. He appointed 12 that they might be. Oh, it's not on the screen. Let's do that. Y'all don't know the Bible by heart?
With him.
One more time. He appointed the 12 that they might be. Thank you. Together, they spent a lot of time together. They walked to Tyre and Sidon. That's a long walk. Then they walked to the borders of the Decapolis. They walked to the parts of Dalmanutha. They walked to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. They walked to Perea beyond the Jordan. They walked to Jerusalem. And would you notice that on Jesus' final week, which we got done talking about, the disciples were constantly with him that week, all week. almost always with him. It's almost like following Jesus isn't about being his student as much as it is about being his apprentice, because an apprentice is almost always with the master. And the problem is that most Christians, we tend to compartmentalize our lives into what's sacred and what's secular. And we put Jesus into the sacred, religious part of our life, and we make everything else in our life, our work life, our home life, our private life, we put that into the secular, and we try to keep Jesus separate. We have our time with Jesus, and we have our time without Jesus. But God never intended it to be segregated like that. He didn't intend to us to live a segregated life, but an integrated life. That's always with him. He intends to be a part of your family life and your work life and your romantic life and your private life and your life and your whole life is supposed to be with Jesus, because that's what discipleship looks like. And when you look at the disciples in scriptures, you will see that they ate with Jesus. They slept with Jesus. They fished with Jesus together. They sailed the seas. They pushed through crowded cities together. They walked lonely roads together. They camped in the deserts together. They prayed on mountaintops together with Jesus. About 12 years ago, bought my first house, and I had my very first home inspection. Did you guys get a home inspection, or did you do the dumb thing and not get one? Get a home inspection. I did, and the home inspector was a guy named Tim Pierrett. Great dude, highly recommend him. He's still in business, local guy. He brought with him an apprentice. He did. And I said, hey, wait. You're not double charging me here. I only paid for one of you. And he says, no, this is my apprentice. He's trying to learn what I do. He follows me wherever I go. And so Tim went on the roof, and guess where his apprentice went? On the roof. And then Tim went into the old dusty attic, and guess where his apprentice was? In the old dusty attic with him. Tim got under the house into the crawl space. There's about 18 inches of clearance down there. There was a lot of creepy crawly spiders under there and cobwebs. Guess who was with him? The spiders. Come on. And the apprentice were with him. Notice the apprentice wasn't sitting back with a clipboard taking notes while Tim does all the dirty work. Notice that the apprentice wasn't a tag-along fanboy enthusiastically admiring the home inspector. Wherever Tim went, the apprentice went with him. And so being a disciple means being constantly with Jesus, because it's not an occasional thing. It's not a 1 hour a week thing. It's not a holiday thing. It's not just I'm with Jesus when I'm feeling down. It's constantly with Jesus. And if you invite Jesus to be with you 168 hours a week and be the master over all your life, then you will look more like his disciple than his fan. And that's what he's calling you to do. So make Jesus a part of your life, not just your sacred life. He's a part of every part of your life. He's with you. Let's look at number 2. A disciple of Jesus does everything Jesus says and does. Being a disciple means being in the game. It means doing what he says. I want to show you a picture of what that looks like. When you're in the game, you're doing things. Not watching things, you're doing things. And when you obey the instructions of the coach, that means you're in the game. Coach Jesus wants you in the game, obeying his instructions, putting yourself under the coach's authority. And when you're in the game, you're copying the techniques that the coach shows you. When you're in the game, you resemble the character and the values of the coach and the people on the team. But sadly, some people choose Christianity as their favorite religion, to be a fan of, the same way they would choose their favorite football team, the Seahawks, to be a fan of them. And they see themselves, they're sitting in the stands, rooting hard for it, but they're just watching. They're not doing it. They're not on the field. They're watching from the stands. They never get on the field. They never do works of ministry. They never share their faith with anyone. Instead, they watch the pastors share their faith. They watch the church staff do the dirty work under the house. And then they're rooting for them. Yeah, you go, church. You go, pastor. You go, Jesus. Biggest fan right here. Not what he asked for. The book of John repeatedly shows how Jesus tries to turn his enthusiastic admirers into disciples who are on the field, who are doing what he says. In John 14, he says, whoever believes in me will also do what I do. He's saying, get out of the stands and out of the field. And then he says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Get on the field. He says, do you love me? He said this to Peter. Do you love me? Peter says, Lord, you know everything, and you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. If you love me, get out of the stand and onto the field. About a year after I bought my house, I had to get some electrical work done because the house flippers who sold me the house buried a bunch of junction boxes behind the drywall, and there's a bunch of knob and tube wiring back there as well. So, contacted an electrician. His name was Jonah Bell, still a local guy, but he works at Treats now. Highly recommend him. Guess who he brought with him? An apprentice. And guess what the apprentice did? Everything he did. Some people are paying attention. I'm giving you the answers. Both of them were pulling wires. Both of them were in the crawl space. Both of them were cussing. I'm not saying you should do that. But they both did they did what each other did. At the end of the day, Jonah showed me a big pile of wire. Look at all that wire I got out. And the apprentice, he had a pile of wire about the same size. And then Jonah said, I got shocked one time. The apprentice said, I got shocked 2 times. And then Jonah said he found 3 buried junction boxes. Oh my goodness. Wow. The apprentice said, I found 6 buried junction boxes. And the apprentice was mad. He went on this tirade about electrical safety. He's like, these house flippers are crooks. You should sue them because this is dangerous. You have kids in the house. I can't believe this. And you could really tell that he wasn't there to just collect a paycheck. He was there because he cared about electricity. He cared about the master's work. And that's what an apprentice looks like. They start to resemble the character and the flavor of the master. And you can be like that too. You can get your hands dirty with Jesus, doing what he did, serving people, blessing people, and you can start to copy the compassion and the patience that Jesus had for people when you start doing what Jesus did. And ask yourself, is my character becoming more like Christ? Am I doing the type of things that Christ did? You see, Jesus is inviting you to be his apprentice, an apprentice with him, who does what he does what he says. Will you join him on that journey?
Yes.
Do it. The longer, if you're going to join him on that journey, then you're going to be constantly with Jesus. And the longer you're constantly with him, the longer you're doing what he says, the longer you're doing what he did, then you'll start to look like him. You'll start to behave like him. You'll start to look like the Jonah's apprentice, like Tim's. You're going to start looking more and more like the image of Christ the more you do what he says and did. Let's look at number 3. The disciple of Jesus is sent by Jesus. There are a lot of Christians that love the gathering. There's nothing Christians love more than getting together, the potluck, and let's just gather, guys. Come on, let's get together. Isn't that the best? Yeah. Man. But then faith in Jesus starts to look like a country club full of like-minded people. And there's so many Christians that just love learning. Isn't it great to just come and be a student and learn? We love that. But then what happens is we start to treat faith in Jesus like an academy. And I'm all for gathering. I'm all for having fun with other Christians. And I'm all for getting smarter and learning and using our brains. But a lot of Christians get stuck there. They're just stuck driving around the cul-de-sac of learning and gathering and potlucks and Sunday school. And they never actually leave the safety of the neighborhood. They just keep driving around the cul-de-sac. They never leave the neighborhood. They never leave the safety of the street. It's just a dead end that you're stuck in, going in a circle. And that's not what discipleship looks like. A disciple means leaving the safety of the gathering to get on the mission field. A disciple means leaving the safety of the classroom to test your knowledge in the lab, on the field. You got to test what you know out there. You got to get out of the classroom and see if this actually works in the real world. In Mark 6, it says, he called his 12 disciples together and began sending them out 2 by 2, giving them authority to cast out evil spirits. They're sent. Yeah. It says, I'm sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. I'm sending you. Right. As you sent me into the world, he's talking to God. As you sent me into the world, I am sending them into the world. That's what an apprentice does. A master sends the apprentice. And when the 12 disciples completed their 3-year apprenticeship, they were sent into the mission field to make more Christians, and then make more Christians into disciples. And we're supposed to be Jesus' disciples who do the same thing. We should look more like his apprentice than we should students, than gatherers and partiers and admirers. We should we should not just be in the academy learning the playbook. That's what a student does. I want to show you someone who's a Seahawk. Those of you who are Seahawks fans will remember Clipboard Jesus. Do you remember this guy? Some big fans remember Clipboard Jesus. But let me tell you about him. This guy, he was a student. He was an apprentice. He was always learning because he was the backup quarterback for Matt Hasselbeck. Matt Hasselbeck was a good quarterback. So this guy's the backup. And his real name was Charlie Whitehurst, but everyone called him Clipboard Jesus because he was never in the game. He was always on the sideline with his helmet off, holding the clipboard, learning the plays, talking with teammates, wearing a headset, just learning and apprenticing and learning and apprenticing. And God, it was just, he also kind of looked like Jesus, right? Don't you think? So he made millions of dollars from the safety and comfort of the sidelines, holding that clipboard, just getting paid, holding the clipboard. I bet he apprenticed that coach for so long he could coach the team. He probably had that playbook memorized. He was always staring at it. And I bet he apprenticed Matt Hasselbeck, the starting quarterback. He apprenticed for so long that he could probably model the perfect touchdown pass, throw that perfect spiral in his head. But he had a reputation for never being on the field. So instead of being called Touchdown Charlie, he was called Clipboard Jesus. What if that was your nickname? My point here is don't be a clipboard Christian. Be a touchdown Christian. Listen, you've been learning a long time.
Right.
You have enough information. You have enough. You've been learning long enough that you can get in the game. Now, God is sending you in the game. You've been holding the clipboard. Great. Now it's time to get in the game and test it. He's sending you to serve people. He's sending you to share faith with people. He's sending you to make more Christians. He's sending you to make disciples. Here's the thing, though. When you get in the game, put down that clipboard, get in the game. You're going to mess up. You're going to throw some interceptions. You're going to fumble the ball. And some people never get in the game because they're afraid of getting it wrong. They're afraid of messing up. But when you throw those interceptions, that's when your clipboard knowledge becomes game-tested knowledge, game-bred. And when your theology becomes practical. It's one thing to learn concepts, but to see if it works in real life, to see if it's practical, that's when theology comes alive. And that's when your faith becomes cemented, is when you get it on the field. Is your faith really faith if you just think it, or is it faith if you do it? The Bible talks a lot about what faith is, and I hope you see that when you're sent, that's when your faith becomes true. And so before we move on, I got to tell you what happened with Clipboard Jesus. You see, in 2010, we have his picture up there. He is. In 2010, the Seahawks needed to win their final regular season game against the Rams, who were in division with them. And it was just one game to make the playoffs and win the division. The problem is Matt Hasselbeck, the starting quarterback for the Seahawks, got injured. Oh my goodness. Well, they named Charlie Whitehurst the starter for the final game of the regular season. Got to put on that helmet, put down that clipboard. Here's what happened. He finished that game with 196 yards, 1 touchdown, 30 yards rushing, no sacks, no interceptions. The Seahawks won. Are you guys here for this? Seahawks won 16-6. And then the following week, the Seahawks got to host the defending Super Bowl champion New Orleans Saints. We were 10-point underdogs in that game at home in round 1. And then Marshawn Lynch broke 9 tackles, ripped off a 67-yard run for the game-winning touchdown. And that prompted a fan reaction so loud and so raucous that it caused a small earthquake under Seattle. That's forever known as the Beastquake. Come on, who's here for that? Was that an exciting time in your life? You remember the Beastquake?
No.
Zen was upstairs like, why are you yelling at the TV? Beastquake, it just happened. It wasn't called Beastquake yet. You guys remember Beastquake? You've seen the highlights. Marshawn Lynch rips off that run. Listen, what if Charlie Whitehurst was too scared to get in the game the week before? What if he never threw that touchdown? What if he never got in the game? What if he never won the final regular season game to get us in the playoffs for that Beastquake moment that's like the greatest moment in Seahawks history? What if he never did that? What if he was always just Clipboard Jesus? What if he never became Touchdown Charlie? We would never have Beastquake if he never got in the game. My point is, this could be you. I want you to imagine the chain of reaction, the chain reaction that can happen when you get in the game. What's going to happen when you put down the clipboard and put on your helmet and get in the game? What kind of beastquake impact are you going to have when you get off the sidelines and actually test your faith, test your theology, test all these things you've been learning in the academy? The point is, you were sent by Jesus to be a disciple more than you were a student, which means you got to get on the field. You're not forever the backup. You got to become the starter. And by responding to the call of Jesus, putting your faith on the field, you could have a beastquake impact on people around you. I guarantee you that's the first time that sentence has ever been spoken by anyone. So, what did we talk about today? We talked about what it means to be a fan of someone, fan of anything, fan of Jesus. But we also talked about what it means to really follow Jesus as a disciple. We saw in the scriptures that a disciple of Jesus is constantly with Jesus, does everything Jesus does and says, and is sent by Jesus. The bottom line is a disciple of Jesus is an apprentice, not a fan. And I believe if you start living as Jesus' apprentice, then you're going to see Jesus' blessing all over your life, because you've made him a constant part of your whole life. You're going to see more of his blessing in your life when you make him a constant part of your life, not an occasional 1 or 2 hour a week part of your life. You're going to see Jesus' character coming out of you because you've made an effort not only to believe in him and root for him, but to be like him and do what he says. Your character is going to change. And you're going to see people coming to Jesus all around you, people growing in faith in your life because you decided to be sent. You decided to put down the clipboard. You're going to see your kids coming to faith. You're going to see your neighbors going to church. You're going to see your coworkers. They're going to swear a lot less. And not just around you. I mean, in general, you're going to rub off on them because you're going to consider yourself sent to them, not sent to church from them. There's a difference between being an admirer of Jesus from the stands and a sent disciple of Jesus on the field. The good news is that no matter how long you've been hiding from your call to be a disciple, you can still answer the call. God's plan is still his plan, and no amount of disobedience, no amount of hiding can change his plan. You're not that powerful. And so the question now is, do you accept the plan? Do you accept his plan for your life? Do you want to step into that, or do you want to keep holding the clipboard? Will you accept his plan for your life?
Yes.
Will you accept his invitation to a journey with him?
Yes.
Will you accept your call to grow from a Christian into a disciple?
Yes.
I want to invite you to answer that call during this next song. You can stand up for this, but my question for you is, what's your next step? Would you stand with me? We're going to sing this song, but we're also going to take a step. What is your next step in your discipleship pathway, your discipleship journey? The front is open up here. If you want to take that step, you can also take that step from your seat. But I invite you to take that step toward Jesus. Make him a part of your life. Commit to doing what he says and does. Commit to being sent. What's Jesus calling you to do next? You got things on your heart today, and that's why I invite you to come up, pray with the prayer team after we dismiss. Just whatever's on your heart, they're here for you. If you think of that prayer request later in the week, you can always use that prayer wall on the website. And I just invite you to stick around, join us for some snacks and coffee. I'd love to meet you, get to know you a little bit more. And we don't call this the end of the service, we call it the send of the service, because today you heard good news. That you're not called to just be a fan, you're called to be a disciple. You're called he wants you with him just as much as the disciples were with him. That's an honor, it's a privilege. And someone out there needs to hear that. That's why we send you to tell them that good news. I also send you to tell them about the good news of this place. Please don't keep this a secret. That empty chair next to you could be full next week, could be full with someone hearing the gospel, hearing the good news about Christ in their life and for their life, all because you invited them. So please do that. If you got to run quickly before I'm able to say goodbye, I get it. I totally understand. Let me just say this before you go, that I love you, and I really mean that, and hope you have a great week. God bless you. Take care. Hallelujah.